Hi, I'm H. Nazario, and here we are doing our fourth segment with Mr. Robert Liebendorfer. And on our last segment, we left where Dr. Kirby, Becker High's principal, approached Mr. Liebendorfer about doing a class on humanities. So Mr. Liebendorfer, that was 1961, I think. He went back to college. Went to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, home of the Commodores, and he took a course on humanities. And tell us about that, Mr. Liebendorfer.
Well, since it was humanities courses, it just wasn't a humanities course. It meant that I studied everything related to philosophy, religion, the theater, literature, art, anything like that. So that when I came back, I could set up the syllabus for Baker, and then once Dr. Kirby saw the syllabus and gave an okay to it, I had to ask Mrs. Taylor, who was at Jordan. She had become the consultant for English teachers. She looked it over, said A-OK to it, and then we had to present it to the board's curriculum committee. They said A-OK to it, so humanities sprung up then throughout the county.
Oh, I see. So you were very well, you were the only person.
At that time, Nancy Salter from Hardaway later joined me, and the two of us then were cohorts.
Now, humanities deals with what?
Well, arts dealt with having a philosophical basis, and then once the philosophical basis was set up, the religion unit came. At that time, the students would choose which religions they wanted to learn about, and then we'd go into the theater. Since I was not an expert in theater, I would ask the theater person to do theater for me, and I'd go and teach her class. And then we'd do the literature, something related to world literature, and then the art.
I see. That's too bad I didn't have that in school. You know. Okay. So then, anyway, so here we are, 1962. And you got your first start at Becker High School.
Correct.
Okay. Now, at Becker High, you taught English and Humanities Studies.
Correct.
Okay. You know, when you were teaching at Jordan High, you didn't have far to go. So how did you get from where you lived to Becker High? Or did you move somewhere else?
Well, I moved to other places in the central part of the city. Generally got a ride with somebody who was working at Baker, so I still didn't have to buy a car. And I didn't buy a car until my daughter was 18 months old, and then I said to myself, she's starting to walk more and more, so I better make sure I get a car in case something happens to her, and sure enough, something did. So I was glad I had a car at that time.
My goodness. Okay, you know, at Baker High, how was your relation with Dr. Kirby?
It was wonderful. Later on, when he became superintendent of curriculum, I believe it was, he would come by and ask me questions about subject matter. Sometimes he would say he came by just to be inspired, which I said, I think you're joking with me, aren't you? Not to him, to myself I would say that. But he'd come by, he wouldn't evaluate me, he wouldn't do anything, he'd just sit there and watch me teach. And that made me feel good. And when he was there at Baker, he would actually bring in troops from Iran. It kind of bugged me at times. And they'd be lined up in the back of the room, on the side of the room, and he would come here, I want you to teach so these people from Iran can see what an American teacher is like.
Really?
And so I'd have to change my...
So I guess it's safe to say that at Becker High, other than having the regular Puerto Ricans and Americans and Filipinos, we had some from Iran too. Oh, Hawaii. I remember we had some. I don't know about the guys, but I remember some good-looking girls from Hawaii that we had at Baker.
Well, these were soldiers from Iran.
Oh, really?
Yeah, these are soldiers that lined up, and they were here to see something about American teaching, American high school.
So, you know, it's safe to say that Dr. Kirby thought a lot of you.
Yes, and I appreciated that greatly.
Speaking of Dr. Kirby, he's gone. Mr. Boyles, he's the principal. How was your relation with Mr. Boyles?
I remember Mr. Boyles as always having a sense of humor, which was wonderful. But occasionally, when I wanted to be serious, he would use humor to disarm me. And so I said I'd better be careful and keep that in mind so that when we got talking one-on-one, I wouldn't be disarmed by his humor.
Are you limited to give us an example?
Offhand, I can't give you an example.
If you do, break in. I want to hear that. Want to hear that. Okay. What were some of your memorable moments at Baker High? Can you remember? I'm sure there were many.
Yeah. Of course, the race riots, we all remember those. And for some reason, people always thought of Baker as a race riot school. And we were an excellent school. We just weren't a race riot school. But it had to be dealt with. And then there were other occasions when there would just be tensions, and that's when I learned how to take care of some of those tensions when there were fights. Because when I went out, after I wrote my book and was going out talking, one question would often come up: how do you handle a fight? Instead of content question about English, they'd say, how do you handle a fight? I'd have to tell them how I handle a fight. And they would say, oh. And I was always pleased that they understood what I was saying.
Is it very long? Because you got me curious. You got me curious now. How do you handle? I mean, at Baker, how we handled the fights at Baker High School. And I don't know when you were there. Yeah, it was still there when you were there. But we went to the place we called the Pines.
Right.
And we settled it right there.
When there'd be a fight, I'd always make sure as soon as I got there, I looked around to see who the loser was. I made sure I put the loser at my back because I knew he was glad to see the fight was going to be over. Then I'd take on who looked like the winner. And sometimes I would have to grab him by the arms and put him against the wall. Other times they would say, okay, they won't fight anymore, or something like that. But once in a while you'd get some of these later on who will be hyped up on drugs. They'll just bounce you off the wall. You had to keep them secure, keep
My
their arms
goodness.
down.
So there was a fear amongst, I don't want to say a fear. You had to be cautious and recognize those things to take care of yourself because you could have been hurt.
Yes, but also you had to also think of those women. And when the girls got in fights, that was terrible to handle because you had to remember they would make charges later that were not too pleasant to hear, and you had to justify, no, that was incorrect, and you had to do what you did because the fight was getting out of hand.
You know, I made a mistake one time.
One time?
Well, one of the many times. There was just two girls in a fight, and I was trying to break it up. If he had seen me afterwards, I was more scratched up. I mean, it looked like I was the one that lost. I got beat up, you know. So anyway, thank you. Listen, we're going to stop again. Time flies by when you're having fun. So we're going to stop this segment right here, and don't go away because we're going to come back for the following segment. Okay, so until then, we'll see you later. Bye.